Thank you. Alyssa Ayres, Council on Foreign Relations. I'll take up the question on China that Ambassador Wisner didn't get to. Maybe mine might be a little different, we'll see. One of the areas that has been a source of the strategic partnership between India and the United States, and frankly, a source of differentiation between our countries and China, is democracy. But India has not been a country that traditionally likes to promote democracy externally. Can you speak a little bit about how the government is thinking about its role as now a member of the Quad consultation? Our strong relationship, the Malabar exercises are just beginning now, along with Japan. How does that democracy piece play in the way India is thinking about its foreign policy?
I'm going to push Alyssa's question also to ask you to expand it a little bit and talk about her question in the context of how India foresees a careful management of its competition and its cooperation with China.
Okay. But before I get to the C word, I want to say a few words about the D word, which is democracy. Because I'm not sure I entirely agree with the assumptions underlying your question. I think Indians are more cautious about talking about promoting democracy abroad. But if you look at the actual record, there was a consistent policy over many, many years of promoting the Democrats in Nepal. When it was a monarchy, first when the Ranas were ruling, then when it was a monarchy. So actually, Nepali political parties, including Nepal Congress, operated for many years out of India. And the democratic forces in Nepal always had a sort of home in India. If you look at Myanmar, again, we were one of the earliest supporters of Aung San Suu Kyi. And when the NLD got going, in fact, a lot of the NLD activists found refuge in India. If you look at Bangladesh, in fact, we have been far more consistently supportive of the Awami League and less so of military regimes and the BNP, which was very closely allied to them. If you look at Sri Lanka, where the big challenge was less of democracy, but more of pluralism of ethnic identity, again, the absence of pluralism and the attempts to impose a very unitary culture was something which clearly was disapproved by India. And again, there was very practical consequences for that. Even in Pakistan, I mean, if you look at the democratic forces of Pakistan, I mean, the Bhutto family at one point of time, and Nawaz Sharif, I mean, these were people with whom there was very visible sympathy where India is concerned. I think, so my first point would be that actually we don't kind of wear it on our sleeve, but like any country, if there are things you believe in, you are comfortable with other people in those societies who have similar thoughts. Now, the other part of the same observation was as though the US has consistently been supporting democracy, which again is a very challengeable proposition. I will not talk of other parts of the world, but at least in our part of the world, a lot of our difficult history comes from the fact that the US had an image of being consistently supportive of Pakistani military dictatorships. So my own sense is we have both outgrown that. You are perhaps now a little more consistent in your practice. We are a little more consistent in our articulation. And I do think today this is a meeting ground between us. But we come from different cultures. In our part of the world, you often do things by more subtle signals than very open policy statements. And I think part of the Indian-American relationship today is harmonizing our ways of pursuing our values and interests. Regarding, when it comes to China, I mean, first of all, it's unrealistic in the world to only do business with people who think similar to you. That doesn't work in the marketplace. It doesn't work on the street. It doesn't work in global affairs. So we have to accept different societies are differently structured. They have their own particular systems. Where we are concerned, where China is concerned, our relationship today is first of all based on the fact, I mean, it is a very, it's the second largest economy in the world. It also happens to be our largest neighbor. It's a neighbor with whom we have a very, very long history, a history of culture, history of interactions of different kinds. And increasingly, it is today our second largest trade partner. The fact that China's influence has grown over many years is also a fact of life. So considering that international affairs is a business of realism, you have to factor all this in and then try to find an equilibrium with the country concerned. And we will, there are differences we have with China. It's not a secret. They accept it. We accept it. We have a boundary issue. We have had negotiations for many years. We have other areas where we may not always agree. But I think today it is a very stable relationship. It's a very mature relationship. Where we differ, we have mechanisms and in a way, sort of ethos of handling it. Frankly, it's not a relationship that has given cause for anxiety to the world for many, many years. Now, your question, Frank, about what are the areas of competition and cooperation. Look, international relations by its very nature is a competitive business. There's nobody with whom you don't compete. But there are a lot of countries with whom you try to find areas of convergence which then become the basis of cooperation. There are areas of convergence with China. I think in the economic domain there is a lot. I mean, today we are getting Chinese foreign investment in India, which is a good thing. We do trade with China, not as balanced as we would like, but again, that's shown trends towards improvement in the last year and a half. But there are larger issues. I mean, there are developmental issues, issues of regimes. What should the WTO be like? How should climate change negotiations be conducted? These kinds of issues, how do international institutions run? So these are sort of areas where actually we have practical understandings with the Chinese. So it's going to be a mixed bag.